Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Expanded Understanding. I'm Zach. Aaron's here with me.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you are coming over from Frank's show, you had an enjoyable time watching Frank. I've had a whole bunch of stuff going on. I don't have any idea what he talked about. What did he talk about, Aaron?
I actually only caught the last few minutes because I was tuning in. I totally forgot it was Frank's show. I've been plowing through episodes of Star Trek Voyager on speed and half. Has been a thing I've been into lately because I like a lot of the dynamics within Star Trek. But yeah, I totally forgot about it. And I was like, oh yeah, Frank's show's coming out right before us, so I just tuned in. So I'm not sure. I think he was telling the story, one of the stories of him and Paula, I think at the end, and then yeah, I don't know. I totally tuned out. I was watching my Star Trek on the other screen.
Cool. Well, maybe somebody else could let us know if you tuned
Yeah,
into
please
Frank's show.
do.
Apparently, we had stuff going on. Hopefully, other people
Right.
didn't have as much stuff going on. I actually totally wasn't even ready for him to get done when he got done. He usually at 8:30 or so,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I think okay. I
so
think they were going to watch Bill and Ted. I think that's what he was saying. So that's why he
oh,
left at 8 because he was excited to go laugh. I caught that. I jive with that. We
well,
got
I'm
Kevin,
definitely all
Jordane,
for that.
Charlotte, Willow, me. I'm in their studio. Kevin, and then yeah, I think everybody and Jun
What's up,
Junjang.
everyone? How is it going? How is everyone tonight? I would love to know.
Yeah, tune in. Share
I'm
your
really
thoughts. How was your week? How was your day? What kind of thoughts have you been having lately that are interesting to you? We would like to know.
I'm gonna have my camera off at some point in time because I haven't eaten it all, and Jen is actually going and getting us food right now, and
Nice.
then I'm gonna eat it, but I want it warm, so
Hmm.
timing.
All right.
Anyways,
We'll figure out that timing.
so yeah, I mean, I've been mostly just having a lot of fun. I don't know what everybody else has been up to, so I don't have really any profound or exceptional topics to talk about today. It's a very a normal we call
Fun
it
is
a
profound.
human day for myself. I guess in a certain way that is kind of profound if you just think
It-
of the idea as profound.
Fun
Pro
and
is
or funny is really profound because it's so hard to generate spontaneously. You know what I mean?
sure.
Or to try to, well, I guess you could. It's so hard for it to, or I guess the variables on it are so subjective to the dynamic, the environment, the people involved, the culture, like awareness of culture. Like there's just so many things.
There's a lot of fucking dynamics out there, especially with humor. I think humor is probably the maybe the most nuanced thing, you know?
Yeah.
Especially given my Polish heritage, there's been a lot of you know the really dark joke in my life, and really dark
Mm.
jokes go to show you so much how you can have something that some people would find it's really bad, but to some people it's quite hilarious to
Yeah.
talk about it.
My dad always had a dark or kind of a I don't know, you could say, I mean, it is dark, so the morbid sense of humor, but also eclectic in a off-putting way, maybe to some people. But I thought it
Uh,
was thought it was great, man. It's like 'cause it's still funny. It's still real observations about people or situations. It's just with a spin on it or saying it in a way that most people wouldn't say, and it's almost
uh,
strikingly more funny because you realize in the moment it's said why most people wouldn't say it that way. But you're right,
sure.
and that's really funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've had a lot of those situations in my life. I like playing, the devil's advocate or the disruptor kind of
Hmm.
position. So a lot of times when I think of well, there's a better way to say this if you don't want to ruffle people's feathers. So I say it the way that ruffles their feathers. That's
Yeah, to get a
pretty
rise
much
out of.
how I operate. It's not really to get a rise out of them. It's to agitate the situation, not in a negative term, but rather that by shaking things up, we get the opportunity for novelty, new perspective, change. Change kind of happens in that, and well, one way that I find that I'm different than other people is that I don't care what happens. I just like watching things change. I don't really care how they change, and I
Uh,
don't really have a deviation of I hope it turns out like this in my own personal life. I have ways that I hope that things turn out, but as far as on a world scale, well, that's the world's decision.
what's
So
okay? That being said, what's the most enjoyable way for you to produce change?
Agitation and disruption. I
um,
like trolling, man. I really
yeah,
do.
yeah.
I'm a troll at heart, big time. Spent
All
many,
right.
many nights of my life sitting there, just like, well, World of Warcraft. I think the entire reason why I actually enjoyed playing the game was to troll people. Honestly, like,
That for
there's
World of Warcraft? And
yeah.
like when in what way? So dive into that a little bit. How do you troll people in World of Warcraft?
Well, anywhere that there's like a global chat channel or any kind of chat channel, you have
Uh-huh.
the opportunity for whatever we could call it psychological ribbing or just playing with psychological
Psychological
dynamics.
ripping.
And
Good one.
yeah,
Yeah,
and a
right.
lot of the,
Yeah.
that stuff's really actually quite funny to me. So
Yeah.
I like to engage with it. I like to break the stereotype that like the only kind of person that would ever do something like this hates themselves and they're projecting on everybody else. I do all the things that those stereotypes say that like I should be this kind of person, but like
Hmm.
I literally just do it because I want to, because I think it's fun. It's not like it's not to ruin anybody's day or anything like
So
that. It's
can
not
can
to
you give an example of
project
something
anything.
specific? It's too vague for me right now.
It's so hard to come up with like just off the top of your head. How do you like tweak
What's a recent
some
one? What's something recent you feel
psychological
like
dynamic?
maybe that comes to mind?
I haven't been doing a lot
Trolling
of
somebody.
trolling lately, actually, when you say that.
Uh-oh. What are you doing for fun then? To create
Playing
change.
video games.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. But how to put this? Well, when you get underneath a person's skin, they are provided the opportunity to engage themselves. A lot of times people don't really handle that dynamic very well, but the only way to get better at it is by doing it. So, yeah, and it's the only way that really change comes about in that. And well, I'm not a big fan of like participation trophy society. Like
Right, everybody gets a gold medal for trying.
yeah, I think you should have some difficulty in your life. I think it's beneficial for people. I think it yields to growth. Um, yeah, and I think we avoid that difficulty too much and like feeling like we didn't really perform maybe as we would have wanted to. Things like this. Or maybe that we just straight up don't operate the way that we would like to. We'd like to be the guy that keeps it cool under pressure and can always turn the very clever joke. But wait, that guy's joke was a lot more clever. Oh, okay. I have one. I play this football game. It's horribly toxic. If you want to have a healthy life, don't play this game. It is actually more toxic than League of Legends, which, if you know anything about gaming, that's almost impossible. I think everybody that plays this probably plays League of Legends. But it is, oh my gosh, the toxicity is just insane. It's really actually pretty crazy. But nevertheless, I like to like fuck around with people. I'm quite good at this game. And
Hmm.
so I fuck around with like the dynamic of that. I'm already in the Hall of Fame. I say stuff like, the two-time active Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? Because you can't get into the Hall of Fame twice. So it's
All
just
right.
like
Yeah,
trolly,
yeah.
trolly shit like that. Well, the other night, some guy he ends up saying to me, we're going back and forth in this dynamic. He's playing quarterback, and like every time that anything worthwhile is happening, it's either myself or my friends. So we're like kind of like ribbing on him with it. It's like, we're really making your day out here, making you look good and stuff like that. Then finally he ends up doing one thing good, and he ends up going. this is, oh man, this is so crude. Nevertheless, we were getting kind of like rude with each other throughout the process of this, and nevertheless he
Hmm.
ends up saying you know uh something about putting the whole team on his shoulders and how his arms and his body was tired from having the whole team on his shoulders. And my response was immediately just like, oh, you have us on your shoulders, is that why our dick's in your mouth? And even like his own friends that he was cued with, just like you hear them chime into voice chat and like snicker, because he
Yeah.
like did not see this coming at all.
What was that
And
on text?
No, it was
Like
over
somebody
voice
texted it.
chat.
That's awesome.
But like, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's
that kind
so
of shit.
crude.
That makes sense.
But like, nevertheless, like you want to be the person that turns the wonderful joke and all these things. But like, it's a fun competition. It's a battle of wits. It
Yeah.
really is in the
Yeah,
long
no
run.
doubt. And it's fun when you can get like multiple people. I guess this is where how it happens organically, just in settings or how into jokes or jokes kind of get on a roll. But when you can have multiple people in the conversation kind of pick up on threads of that joke, so then this guy gets stick in your mouth jokes in different nuanced ways throughout the rest of that dynamic, or if even
right?
going ahead if you guys are on team or ways to pull that in. That's really funny. But yeah, it's like yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny, very dynamic.
At the end of it, it was kind of funny because we're being completely toxic with one another and everything. We ended up winning the game like 40 something to nothing. And it's like an utter blowout. And we at the end of it, we all said like good game to each other, and there was no hard feelings. It's just the internet being the internet. If you've been on the internet for a really long time, it probably like makes sense to you. If you haven't been on the internet for a
Yeah,
really long time, then you're like, oh, that's kind of rude or whatever. But that
right.
shit is just standard for the internet, really.
Yeah, depends. I guess depends on the setting because there's totally different social environments. I mean, well, Facebook
Sure.
can be all sorts of things that are just ridiculous, but then, Instagram, and it just seems like even the comment structure. And I mean, obviously the way it works is a little different, but the social dynamic within it is different. So imagine gaming, so a lot of stuff you talked about on Twitch, like totally different, more
Oh yeah.
common interaction for those who are familiar with that platform, those platforms.
Yeah, I mean, fucking people from Twitch halfway speak a different language, because
That's what you're saying
they
with all the emojis and shit.
yeah, they say these out, and like when you talk to people that use Twitch a lot in real life, they say the text string to call this emoji. Like they'll say that like someone's acting really papega, which like papega is Pepe the Frog, but in this specific channel, I don't know what GA was an acronym for or
Hmm.
like what it was a shortening of. But like that's how you call the emote is you type PEPEGA, but that's become like whatever that is, like a verb or whatever.
Yeah,
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 like a
yeah,
verb. Like it's a thing you're doing. You're acting papega, and
yeah.
like
And you're saying the actual name of the emoji out of the type caption for it
yeah,
or whatever. Yeah,
and it's
interesting.
kind of it's weird because it literally turns into a different language, and so it's weird because for a long time we've always had like there's a generational gap that happens with language all the time, and it's a way that basically adults lose relevance with the younger group of people. It's one way that you become old. You're old when you're not really relevant to society's
Mm.
lower, younger class than you are the older class. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
one way that you can keep yourself relevant with society is just simply by like keeping up on the way that people talk. Over the course of history, it's generally operated in such a way that like there's not so much like verbiage from specific situations that like is totally different than people use in other places in the world, And
Yeah.
when there is, it's like this emergence that kind of carries through that whole age group. A good example of this at this current point in time would be where people say, it's come out recently, that's fire. Kids will
Oh yeah.
say.
Okay.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
kids will say
Yep.
that's fire. An older one sent from before that was dank. It came from the potheads, and it actually meant really good weed, despite the fact that a
Right.
dank area is like a moldy and moist area.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Nevertheless, it meant something different, and like that kind of, I guess, age-based diction changes. Weird thing about the world right now is like, and I don't know if this has ever happened. We actually have like a branching. There's the age group of younger people, say the ages of 12 to 23, and that's maybe kind of broad. Inside of there, you maybe have like two groups, but nevertheless, like in terms of age, there's actually two completely different directions that they're going to, in the sense that like there's the kids that are very much so use the internet a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
they have one way of talking and they know about one set of things, and they have their own like kind of language. And then there's kids that are the more like what the world used to be before the internet, right? Like maybe
Hmm.
they go to parties, they play sports, they hang out with their friends, da 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 da.
Yeah.
Not like they go sit on the internet and they hang out with their guild or whatever, right?
Right. Right.
And they don't speak the same fucking language at all. Like where like kids on the internet don't say the same shit that those kids say, and so literally just through the words that they say, you can then end up like hearing where they come from, you know? And that's always happened, but it's on like a different way now. It's where they come from, internet versus not internet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is really, it's really fucking weird because the internet is like a place but it's not a place, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Digital
it's so
cafe,
weird.
bro.
Yeah, but it's like becoming such a real thing,
Yeah.
you know, and it's been
I
so
was
fun for me over the last 20 years to watch the internet become a real thing, you
speaking
know?
of progressing into real things. I just watched the this morning. I watched the hour stream. I think it was they streamed it yesterday or whatever from Elon Musk on the Neuralink progress and
Uh-huh.
updates and where it's at and everything. And so now it's this like quarter sized, between a quarter and a half dollar sized, um, like chip that will they'll take out a piece of your skull and implant it so it's flush with your skull and skin will be all top of it. Hair grows, I guess, still over it. There's just a scar there. I must slip it under the skin and then take out the skull or something so the hair follicles still grow or something. And then it's got these nano fibers that go down in. There's some I took screenshots and stuff from. I'm sure it's all up on the internet now of these threads. I think they have what 1,024 channels that are both read and write. And I think get into this whole thing. They showed it. They had it on pigs. So he did this thing from a kind of a sterilized place that had kind of these pig pen setup places too. I don't know. And they had these pigs come in, showed that how that it was implanted. They showed them on like a treadmill and watching where the predictions based on the Neuralink where their joints would be at on their actual body and where they actually were with sensors tracking them, and they were almost dead on. So like, but he was just talking. I mean, he was talking about it very practically, and then get into one of the things they were asking the people was that when they're talking to people that are part of the team, I think they have 100 employees now. They're looking to expand that massively for all different parts of production and research and um, but they were asking like, what's your hope that this will turn into? Like, what your personal hope that this would turn into? Some of them, one of the guys said, hope that we'll be able to recall memories, like pleasant memories, or help with depression or stuff, to vividly, like holographically almost or internally pull up memories in a certain way or display them. Also, being able to share information. One of the things that totally makes sense is that I mean, Elon Musk and someone else talking about just language itself is so slow. Just the language itself is so slow. So like actual practical
Hello,
telepathy.
how are you
Jeez.
today? Just to
Yeah.
find out how someone is to like trigger the thought, like fuck me, that's forever. I
Yeah.
can think
Insane.
about the entire like my whole life in 1 second, you know, in
Yeah.
some way. But fucking, it's so crazy. He's right. He's right. Like, and I love the fact this is how you know he's an Arcturian. If you want to go into like those kind of ways of
Sure,
going,
yeah,
because
do it,
he's all
please.
about like the data transmission. I mean,
Yeah,
Neuralink itself is all about like that data transmission
yeah,
already, but like it's even the idea that he's got like okay, so the first thing he was talking about with Neuralink was like our interface with computers right now we use like our fingers and like it's too fucking slow. And he's absolutely right. It's way too slow. But then this is just another level of that. He's like, shit, dude, like even our talking is too fucking slow. And
right.
it's like, you're right. Even our talking is too fucking slow. It takes forever. Great communicators have a tendency to say more words too. Are they actually great? I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's because yeah, I don't know because well, it's a whole interesting thing to open up to. But see, we got Willa said she saw that also with Pig Gertrude, who's up in there. Yeah, they kept pointing out how happy the pigs were, even before and after installation. Or was it one that had been in there for 2 months and the pigs seemed normal and fine? It's like I mean that's fine. They do seem normal, but like it's a pig, man. It's not a human. Like,
Right. Yeah.
how do you know? It's not like twitching. You know, it's not. There's no clear signs of like neural degradation. But I mean, how do you really know? But I guess that's a pot. That's better than it being bad. Will said, I hope this technology opens our minds and makes us realize we are capable of these things on our own without technology.
Yeah, and that's a there's an interesting topic right there, especially and you would definitely have some insight on this because the concept of the Nephilim, the fallen ones, the fallen angels, like what are they fallen from? You know,
Mm,
they're fallen from grace. What does grace mean? You know,
mm.
what does that mean to you? What are the Nephilim to you?
Are you asking me specifically?
Yeah, you. Yeah.
All right. So from well, if we're going from biblical text, the Nephilim are the fallen. beings that it came down and bred with women, and then they had that, or the Nephilim. Sorry, the fallen angels came and had sex with human women, and their offspring were half spirit being, if you will, and half human. So they were the Nephilim or the Titans and the things of old and old mythology. And then there's all these battles for, and this is different, I think, Yuga cycles and things when weird stuff happens and correlate the text, but that they're half breeds of something interdimensional, if you will, and something more material. To really put it short, as far as the definition
So
goes.
when we put a computer literally into our brain, do we not become a half breed of something more material?
Yeah, see, here's the thing. So here's the thing with Star Trek too. Like watch all these Star Trek episodes because they get into a lot of because the uniqueness of humanity is kind of it's not it's trying to create trade and just like exchange of culture and just growth and exploration as people, right? And then they end up being the ones who will arbitrate a lot of neutrality agreements or different things. But you see the different belief systems or prejudices that come up in different species, which obviously applies to different cultures today or whatever. But like interspecies breeding and those dynamics. And you have these purists in certain episodes that are just they talk about, I think, one in the actual Enterprise, the last one, maybe the last episode of the 2001 2004 series with Scott Backrack. It's like the first one, and there's a purist person that he didn't like us going into the galaxy and interbreeding, and they had this half human, half Vulcan offspring, and that it was they're going to kill the baby, and because they were, or if they didn't pull all the aliens off of Earth and everything to get them out, so I could make humanity pure again, that he was going to kill this baby and blow up San Francisco or whatever, all the shit. But the point is, like, they still have these debates over trying to create purity, but like the reality is, moving forward in reality, if there are other species, that are interspecies relations and offspring is going to be a thing. So it's like carry those thoughts out 300, 500,000 years. Yeah, we're not purely human anymore, but we're not purely human now. We've just been secluded to one interbreeding sphere, I guess, if you will. So it makes sense that over time we'd eventually be, even in a physical manifest, our descendants would be a mix of a lot of different things,
Sure. Yeah. So
including
out
technological integration.
outside of the, how do you think that maybe that do you think that biblical story applies to anything that we're experiencing on the planet now?
Gosh, let me dive back into the whole line of reasoning that I had connected from all that. Um, whether it's literally true or metaphorically true of things that have happened in the past, genetic tampering or altering from different classes with different technology that we think didn't exist that actually did, especially with things like Gobekli Tepe and things that whole bunch of other stuff, the indigenous people's stories of there being crystal cities and things working by water and crystals and light and technology and like all this stuff. So the Nephilim stories breed down into a lot of the, let's say, like sharks with their black eyes or things that seem just predatory or evil, for example, potentially, are the perversion, if you will, or the intentional um, creation of beings to destroy, as opposed to offset the balance of the biosphere for their own agendas. I don't know if that simplifies it down. For me, it does. That
No.
takes a lot of it takes a lot of stuff that I've learned. I'm trying to put into a nice little package here to like cross belief systems. Um, Genetic manipulation over time affected in our species, in our culture, in our biosphere, and things that we may not even be aware of. That, I mean, there's no like moral stance to have on it. They're from eras of time before ours that have left us with the ecosystem that we are in now.
The Nephilim were.
Correct, and
So
probably still
you
today
so
if one of
the
the
Bible story
initial.
to you is a historical story in this regard,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of actual historical
despite the fact
overlays.
that there's no actual proof of any of that happening.
Uh, depends on what you mean by proof. I think there's a lot of cross referencing from a lot of the different texts that say the same thing. So that to
Well,
me is a lot of historical
writings
proof.
about something is not actually proof of something, though.
Okay. Well, it depends on what the writings are. It depends if they're firsthand or where they came from or preservation. But writings definitely are,
No,
are
not
they're
really,
evident. Well, not
because
maybe not proof, evidence. I mean, if we're splicing words here, doesn't mean it's conclusive, but it's
evidence of,
evidence.
yes,
Sure.
proof is not evidence, though.
Okay.
Evidence
Differentiate.
is evidence points to the possibility of, proof removes all doubt.
Okay.
If it's proof,
Sure.
then
So
like we
evidence. Yeah.
know that.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So like well, we found one of their bodies or something, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? This is the way that
Well,
law
there's
looks
that.
at it. Like
Yeah.
habeas corpus, the body must be present. If the body is present, then it is proved that there has been a murder. If you cannot present the body, then the fact that there even was a murder may be hearsay. This
Yeah.
is like if you went to law school, this is what they would teach you about habeas
Gotcha.
corpus,
Okay.
and like that. That's the thing. Like you need something physical that proves that it happened physically. Otherwise, it could just be thoughts, right? And like a writing in a book.
Gotcha.
So we take down these numbers and ledgers and all this stuff like that, but realize also like well, the entire idea of someone like cooking the books on accounting is that they take all the factual numbers and then write false ones in there. They're
Right.
not factual anymore. Now they're fictitious,
Well, if
and
we've
then
got
people believe them as
on the
facts,
same
and it becomes
stream of
problematic.
Nephilim or giants being regular in our population more than people know. I mean, there's plenty of articles. I think you can just look up microfilm or newspaper articles from the late 1800s, early 1900s, even Google it. But there's different, YouTube videos that put these together and different documents you can find of actual giants being found in the ground, like 12 feet, 36 feet, full skeletons. But the Smithsonian comes by, eats them up, and apparently they get rid of them, or you don't hear about them. But you hear about those stories. So I don't know. There's enough
Is that true
evidence.
though?
I've seen
Like, I
enough.
mean,
I've seen enough microfilm and like evidence in newspapers. I followed those for a while. I followed like the channels that actually would like that's what they did was try to understand and find the evidence for this stuff, different ones. And so enough that I've seen enough evidence, I believe that's very true. That
huh.
that stuff has been just taken off of our radar because it doesn't fit with the narrative, the 6,000 year historical narrative. So I think the institutions like that definitely have things that they don't want people to know. I mean, I do think a lot of stuff like Stargate and different things are soft disclosure stuff. Man, there's just a lot of stuff that and it keeps the main populace satiated in our sci-fi and engagement or fictional engagement of it, and we keep living our lives. But I think a lot of that's very, very, very true.
Sure. Hmm. I don't know. I'm not entirely like. So I've been a quote unquote conspiracy theorist for a long
Yeah,
time. I've been on the deep end with the best of them. I've believed the most wild stuff. You know
and
what I
this
mean?
one's too out there for you, huh? From what you've
It's not
seen.
that it's not about this one. It's about literally just like all of these stories over the recent. I've come to question a lot of this. Not stuff that actually has proofs. Like realize there was a point in time where you're getting called a conspiracy theorist for talking about like heavy metals being sprayed out of airplanes when I mean
Hmm.
the evidence was a lot. There was a lot of evidence that was going down.
Right,
Pictures inside of stuff, and it wasn't that any one of those was proof. But once you get that much evidence inside of some place, it becomes highly improbable that this is not factual.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so, but there's a lot of these stories. I mean,
Hmm.
everything's a story, true or not. But there's a lot of stories out there that they don't have a lot of proof behind them. I.e., crop circles are because aliens are trying to communicate with us. They're apparently intelligent enough to travel across the stars, get all the way over here, but instead of just communicating what they want to say, they're going to draw a picture in a field kind of in the middle of nowhere, but not actually in the middle of nowhere. Almost, most of them being in the
What do you
very
What do you think
same
crop circles
region.
are?
uh, Quite possibly somebody having fun. Like, and that's the most logical argument to it is that
It's not.
some
It's
human
not
went
though.
out
When
there
you.
and
It's
did
not. Then
that.
it's not though. When you look into it, like the way they bend the stalks over, the radiation inside the fields that they bend the stalks over, they don't break them.
It
They haven't been able to
seems like
replicate
it's
that.
not until we actually have proof of how they
No,
are
but I know. But
generated.
when you see the documentaries on it, I'm not saying like what the night thing is about
It's all
documentaries.
conjecture though.
I
Like
understand, but
every
when
position
you
on it
follow
is
the evidence,
conjecture.
it eliminates things that are
I
likely to be the
understand,
case.
but when you follow the evidence, no, if it's conjecture, and it's laying on a maybe no matter how far you follow its evidence.
Great,
That's
I
the point
understand
of me
that. When you
saying it's
follow the
conjecture.
evidence, though, it also tends to rule out
So
certain
it's
things.
aliens, because here's the number
That's
one
not
piece
what
of
I'm saying,
evidence that
Zach. Why would
rules
you
it
say
out
that? All
is,
I'm saying is, go ahead.
well, I mean,
What rules it out?
if we're saying that it's aliens, anything that has to do with aliens, we haven't ever seen any aliens. Oh, but that's because they're hiding them from us. That's a fucking huge job. That's a huge job. And if the quote unquote aliens really wanted themselves to be disclosed, it'd be an impossible job because they could just send hordes and hordes of them here or whatever, right?
Okay.
So like, and then there's no stopping it. I mean, if 8 billion
Well,
things from a
sure.
different
Yeah,
planet
but
show
that's
up
like
here, no
you're
government's ever
ruling
gonna
out
find you.
ruling out those politics that are in play there free will, like what disclosure, higher entities knowing when if they come in and manifest in some way that would mess with our timeline, they may having some dynamics that there already have been aliens and agreements with governments and secret
Yeah,
portions of the government. I mean, are you
it's
just
a
playing devil's
fun story
advocate,
to
or have
think
you never
about.
actually seen the
It's a fun story.
documents?
Oh
What are
no,
all the
I've looked
CIA
at all
documents
that
on?
shit.
Then so that's all bullshit to like mislead the public. I mean, maybe is that what you're saying?
Well, you're saying this. Here's the interesting thing about the CIA documents about anything. Um, so the government is hiding stuff from us. They're lying to us. They're not telling us the truth. But these documents right here, completely factual.
No, that's silly, Zach. The documents there lead to they're hiding more from us than they tell us when they blatantly show us the Monroe Institute and all those technologies for consciousness, and then that's in '83, and then they've had the astral projection remote viewing teams. So there's things most
Sure.
people don't know about, or they get spun in movies like what the Men Staring at Goats or things that's all, oh yeah, they looked into it, but it didn't work. That's what most people think. It's because of the documents. But if
Right.
you actually look into the documents, it's not what they're saying at all. They maybe close down that one program, open 7
Well,
others under
that's
a
the thing
subname.
about a whole bunch of them is that like what it sounds like when you first look at it. It sounds like something all like, whoa, that's really like a lot going on there. When you actually go deep end down a lot of these things, Monroe Institute is a perfect one. It ain't. It's not as profound as they might make it sound. Like if you're like, traveling to other dimensions with your mind is real. CIA documents prove. Like, you're constantly traveling to a different dimension in your mind. If you were being like very direct to the definition of that, every single change that happens in your mind is a new dimensionality of the way that you think. So, like,
Okay.
that statement doesn't necessarily mean a huge thing. When people hear that, though, to them, it means like a huge thing. But when you
Okay.
then look into where they would get this kind of thing from, the Monroe Institute, even inside of the Monroe Institute, realize Monroe Institute itself, which supposedly is now all supported by the government and everything like that, supported, studied by the government. According to the Monroe Institute, all of those stories are in your head. The story is entirely in your head. The idea that the way that a normal human thinks something is real is not. That's false.
Hmm.
That's a thing that it's a story that you tell yourself about reality. The true nature of reality, according to their beliefs, high focus level beliefs, is very, very simple and doesn't really have like a lot of rules. Every story exists because really all you gotta do is just make something up and then that dimension exists. It already exists inside of your brain and it's kind of working its way out right away. And that's the whole
Okay.
belief
So
of
the CIA
this.
dynamic, though, would be leading into shared dimensions inside of your each other's minds, or some kind of shared telepathic resonance. Hence, remote viewing teams for actually gaining actionable intel for decades.
Sure. Yeah, but these are probabilities. You
Sure,
can't
absolutely.
look
That's
at
why they
that
have teams.
information and go
Increases the
like
probability.
every single time that they remote view something, it's successful and it's on the money. Probably not true. Very,
Right. It is.
very,
You're
very
right. It's
unlikely.
all probabilities. That's why they have teams. So they all have different facets of it. They have different impressions based on their own experiences of the world and their own symbol sets, their own internal perceptions, their own
From the place
ability.
where they get that, if enough people are looking for a murderer, literally the murder didn't even have to happen in order for them to not only find the murder, find the gun, and be able to prove it. Because through their remote viewing practice and shared consciousness of that space, they would literally manifest that reality into being and create basically what functions inside of psychology a cognitive bias, a hypothetical bias. Only that hypothetical bias is now completely, for lack of a better word to humans, true. It's a reality. It actually exists and it is
Sure.
provable with proof.
Okay.
There's a dead body, habeas corpus, like you can prove it. But even by their own stuff, that does not actually mean that that thing happened without that interaction.
Okay, but I think in the remote viewing dynamic, they're trying to find something that's actual. Let's say a location where they know an object is present at, but they don't know where it's at. So they have the
Uh-huh.
coordinates. My understanding, the remote viewing teams, they would put what they're looking for. They would all they would It would be in an envelope with a series of numbers on it. The numbers lead to an actual report or what they're actually looking for. What they would give to the remote viewers is that envelope to focus on it with that number. I don't know if they gave them the number or whatever. So they didn't know what they're looking for or that they're looking for an item. They just said focus on this number, and then they write down, record, draw, whatever it is they perceive and get up. They put all those together, and they get sometimes they'll get coordinates, they'll get locations. They have enough of a circumambulated perspective from everyone's piece of the puzzle that they can often locate what they're looking for, depending on the team they're working with and a lot of other dynamics. I mean, if we want to get into like psychic teams and then psychic defense teams on other government, I mean, there's probably a lot more going on there. That's a very oversimplified dynamic, but I don't see that very hard to believe that that's a real thing at all based on documents that have been released, plus personal experiences and a lot of other firsthand stories and experiences.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like you get enough people's thoughts and filter them. Probably this is a standard filter inside of really any kind of observation. Yeah, many people look at the experiment and see what they see, and when enough of them see the same thing, then you action on it. But I'm not talking about that at all. I'm
Okay.
talking about the fact that through the functions, the base of where they get the whole idea for this, the Monroe Institute, if you think about something enough like that, you create it into being. It
Right.
wasn't a reality before it was thought about. It was a reality after it was thought about purposefully by this quote unquote remote viewing team. But if that was the case and that's what they're doing, well, no one is safe because they can. That's we're looking glassing here. This you can create a reality where something has happened, and merge it into this reality. This happens all the time. Amazon.com, perfect example. A tesseract inside of Jeff Bezos' mind, the idea for a new kind of bookstore, has tesseracted out into the world and now basically runs the world.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
this is a perfect example.
Well, it's a
of-
manifestation, ultimately, from your own thought forms or will intent or of groups or teams or focus.
manifestation in this sense just means to bring it into being.
Right.
Right? So that's a very loose term. And building any business, building any relationship, having a kid, all of this stuff could be understood as manifestation if we're sticking with that like looseness of the term.
Well, right, but you're talking about something coming from a thought form into a physical manifestation.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Which a child is that. Everything is that. Everything begins as a thought. That's
Speaking of which, I was just thinking about this earlier. So, Minority Report. We'll brought this up. Yeah, the precogs. So I was just thinking about it earlier. We were talking about language is really slow, but I was thinking about even just tactile input. And that I remember that one of the best movies that did it. What came to mind was Minority Report, was a holographic input. And he had these gloves he put on. It was just way more. Obviously, telepathic would still be better, but being able to interact three dimensionally, once you get used to that form of user input, we're used to keyboards and shit right now. But if you grew up on that technology, that's a way better way to engage.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, telepathy is the way to go, especially if you're like Terrence McKenna take on telepathy, which was that like a standard person with telepathy is like I can hear instead of you talking to me, I can hear that in my head, and but not that you can. His belief of telepathy was that like real telepathy would be that I could actually see what you mean. Like I would be able to, you would have a thought and I would have that thought inside of my head the same way you have that thought, which allows for a significantly different experience than
Totally.
just me like communicating with you
Yeah.
my thoughts. You know what I mean?
So it's the words and the meaning and the nuanced understanding and intention.
Visions and the emotion
Yeah, all of it.
and the intentions and the
Yeah.
energy inside it, like everything.
Yeah, 100%. Way better.
And like if we were able to do that just with basically like a snap of a neuron, like compare that to our current communication and you realize that no matter how good humans get at communication, if they keep this modality, they're still garbage.
Yeah, no doubt.
Still not good.
Yep.
I think the whole psychedelia, like glossolalia, the idea like things speaking in tongues or making like really noises that sound like words but kind of also sound like 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 a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have heard an entity or something else. Sometimes it's a box. Sometimes it's just a sound in the area. Something talking like this. I really think that's a multi-dimensional language. Like basically you could understand it as they're saying like many, many words simultaneously. And it's really just like the same kind of language that we use taken to a whole nother level. I had a hypothesis on these things at one point in time that like they were much higher intelligence than us, whatever I was interacting with at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was having to dumb itself down in order to interact with me. But this was like the dumbest it could get. You know, like it actually had like real telepathy and it was used to doing that. And it was like, fuck, how do you do this talking thing again? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
no
right. You
shit.
make mouth noises. But when it does it, it makes mouth noises on like a level that a human is like, what the fuck is going on? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, fucking, it's altogether possible. You know what I mean?
Until
Nobody knows what that
sometimes,
glossolalia is,
until
really.
sometimes it creeps in and sounds like shit about a Kia, said about a Yamaha.
Yeah, like you hear something out of it, and maybe that's one of the like 11,346 things they're saying at the exact same
Yeah,
time.
no shit,
Because
huh?
they're going slow, as slow as they can. They're trying to dumb it down for you, but they're a billion years in the future as far as intelligence goes.
Mm.
And so like utterly retarded to them is 52,000 IQ. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
just so a very smart human at 200 IQ looks like a I don't know like a rock
Yeah, at
basically
the same time, I think I
comparatively.
don't think I'm sure there are that are much more their IQ is a lot higher, but sometimes like with Star Trek and stuff, you see all sorts of different species. I mean, anything you can conceive of really. But some that's just their form of communication. They may have a lower IQ, but that's their form of communication. Just that's the way they exist. They
Yeah, I mean
coexisted
that
with
could just be
telepathy or
how the
whatever.
thing talks.
Right.
You know?
That too. You
Yeah.
never know, man. Who knows?
I was looking for something more fantastical at that point in time that made it out like it substantiated how I was an idiot. I had been going through some right sizing of my ego around that time.
Hmm.
I'm a very confident person, and one of the things that psychedelics has liked to bring to me a lot of times was like, that right sizing. Like, actually, you're not that fucking important, bud. You know?
Mm.
And I think we are a balance of very important and equally unimportant at the same time. We live
Yeah.
right in that little perfect gap, right in the middle there. But it's easy to get your head one way or the other. And then the interesting thing about psychedelics is it seems if you're really far one way, it has a tendency to show the other way. So if you're like, I don't have any confidence, etc., it'll be like, I it's all loving and it cares about you and it says you're good enough and all these things.
Oh, I think Zach's camera froze.
Like you're an
There it
inconsequential
is.
speck of dust. Like, look, this is the entire universe. And now we're going to zoom in. It's going to take like the next 786 years because it's fucking basically slow motion from where we're going, or at least it seems that way. But really, we're
Mm.
just having to zoom in so far before we can get to some particle that we could identify as you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I pressed the wrong fucking button, not looking at my camera or
What?
at my fucking I'm mindlessly grinding in this RPG game with a huge group of people, but I'm like
Awesome.
not paying any attention to it and I
Yeah.
forgot to switch my weapon and the the skill on that button normally is a gigantic meteor storm AoE. But if I have the wrong staff on, it dash teleports me like 40 meters ahead. So I was standing there, all these mobs get pulled out of this door. I go to AoE them and I dash right into the middle of them. It's like totally not
Oh,
intended.
maybe that's when you froze. Your camera froze for like 5 seconds or something there. Maybe that's when it was.
No, I mean that might be because of that. Like, yeah,
Maybe that was your energetic reaction from freaking out after realizing you
that was
dove right
actually
into the middle.
beforehand. Maybe it was just if my computer was choking before me. It's ahead
Yeah.
of me. It lives in my future, and I'm the imagination of my past.
Ooh, just write that one down.
I'm stealing it from Bill Hicks, basically. We are
Okay.
the imagination of ourselves. There's a, you've probably heard it before. It's on a Tool album,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah, yeah.
a fairly popular thing from him. A little news report on a kid who did LSD that day, but or mushrooms or something. I don't remember, but nevertheless, yeah, mistakes were made.
Yeah,
Life goes on though.
Bill Hicks has some great stuff.
He's a good guy. I liked him.
Him and was it shoot, what's the other guy? White hair. Um, he died now, but he was doing comedy for a long, long time, and he did a lot of political stuff. Gosh, what is his name?
Why are Carlin?
Yes, George Carlin. That's what I
Big
was
fan
thinking.
of Carlin.
Yeah, George Carlin, and
He's the whole reason why I started getting all weird on words. Actually, little known fact: his
mm,
his drive on parkways, park on driveways. That he has a piece. It's about that. Like humans are fucking weird. You know, like we have these words that are supposed to mean something, but like when a car's moving, it's driving, and when it's not moving, it's parked. But we drive on parkways and we park in driveways. What kind of
yeah,
fucking sense does that make? That's humans in a nutshell for you right
yeah,
there.
no shit.
Coincidental opposite. But like
Hmm.
it was that skit that got me going like, wait a minute, we fucking use words weird, you know? And
Yeah,
that's grown over 20 years or something
yeah,
to
yeah,
me now being like, oh, I need to know the etymology of the word the because like it's like a compulsive disorder that I have at this point in time
yeah, yeah.
basically. So I'm partially autistic in the good way. And so this is one of the ways that I really, appreciate the autistic side of myself is I need to
Yeah.
know too much about every fucking word while
Mm,
that's simultaneously also knowing that technically none of it's right because people use a word to mean whatever they want and someone in another country that doesn't even speak this language could need a new word for something and could use the word ashtray, right? And like to them it does not mean that at all. It means like a baby elephant, but only when it's limping on three legs. And
mm,
it's an ashtray now. And now the word is like completely unbelievably convoluted, but
mm,
never got convoluted at the same time. It's only convoluted in crossover. So it's still totally right and completely true, and no one's wrong, but no one has any fucking idea what's going on now. And so, like, that's amazing.
yeah.
How great. Like, what a great joke we've played on ourselves. You thought you were talking to make sense of things. I am quite positive at some point in time we're going to realize, like, the whole talking thing, that really just confused us. We need to go a different route. Like, I
Mm,
really think that's going to happen,
yeah.
honestly. It's
Yeah, I
just too
agree.
confusing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a pretty smart cookie, and I've spent a long time studying words and communication and trying to get better at it.
Yeah.
And I'm here to report back from the frontier that honestly, it's just too hard. This isn't worth it. It's just not
Yeah,
worth
man.
it.
Yeah, I'm with
Like
you. Yep.
I literally like gave up on saying the right words and went back to just saying whatever words occur to me. And if someone doesn't like it, that probably means we're not supposed to talk to each other, so they can go away. That's the way that I operate now, and I think
All
it works
right.
100,000 times better than what I was doing before. Like not trying to
Good.
mince my words ever, just like authentically putting myself on blast. That's how I say that. And some people are like, I don't like that word, and I'm like, I guess we need to go to different places then, because I talk like that like
Mm,
all the time. It's
yeah.
a thing I say. I'm the least gay bashing person on the planet. I have tons of friends that are homosexual. I've had the multi-person sexual encounters that had males in them, although I am a completely heterosexual person myself. I say the word faggot all the time because like it's a piece of my childhood. Everybody called everyone a faggot in my childhood. And I'm
It's
not
true.
going to stop.
Yeah,
I'm
mine
not going to
too.
stop because somebody gets offended by that because of their choice of sexual orientation. There's
Yeah.
no problem with it. Like I'm not even saying it in a bad way. I'm like stop
Yeah.
being a fag, dude. Like it's
Yeah.
I'm not going to change for you. So if someone like has a problem with that and they don't want to ever talk to me because of that, fine by me, dude. I got enough
Yeah.
friends. I talk too much as it is. So, it's all good. You know, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, that's funny because I think that was definitely my childhood. I think I've heard Frank say that too. Like, I think we did that. We were doing that talking on the show, one of the shows. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, certain words, man. And gay, like it's gay, or no
Yeah.
homo. We were doing that for a couple years. See if you compliment a guy or something after Zach, I really appreciate you. No homo.
However, to be completely authentic with myself, there's another word that also isn't liked that I choose not to say. And
Mm,
at a core level of myself, because I really wanted to figure out like what people were thinking about this, why
mm.
don't I say the N word with the hard R? Or even with an A on the end of it, being a white person, one that has been given the
Great
N
question.
card by some people, but I'm okay with saying faggot. Answer: I'm not nearly as scared of a homosexual person beating me up. That's the reason. That's the whole reason. It's
Hmm.
just if they don't like it, it's just as discriminatory or whatever. But I'm just not afraid of them beating me up. However, 6'4", 320-pound Leroy, who was a Golden Gloves boxer, I don't really want to make him angry. I really don't, because if he just decides to turn over and destroy my face, that's a thing that happens now. And so like what is going on there? I mean, like, we should definitely, as a surviving organism, try and, not get our
Do you
face
have
destroyed.
is
You know
there
what I
any
mean?
other way you restrict yourself because for any other reason besides you might get beat up?
What you could call morals or ethics, but they're not, like, morals and ethics are very subjective. They're my morals and they're what I believe in ethics.
Yeah,
And
totally.
those guide me in some way in terms of my candor, my tenor, and the way that I approach any situation. But they're not based off of what other people think. Like, even that one, the hard N bomb, it ain't got nothing to do with, like, well, I don't want them to feel discriminated against, or I really appreciate black people and I'm against slavery. No, it's got nothing to do with any of that. I just don't want to get punched in the head by someone who
Right.
can't handle a word. That
Yeah.
I've had so many people freak
Yeah,
out
yeah.
about words in my life,
Yeah.
and they have a tendency to get extremely violent over that one, and that's not something I don't need that kind of fucking noise in my life. You know what I mean?
What a great way to explain that or think that through. Yeah, because it's really yeah.
I think a
It
lot
totally
of
makes
this is
sense.
the same thing with a lot of people, at least if, the common white boy like
Yeah.
me. They're totally fine with saying the F word, meaning a homosexual orientation, but they're not okay with saying the N word,
Right.
meaning a gender orientation. And the reason is because they don't want to get beat up. That's the primary reason.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't blame them. I think that's a super good reason. But this begs the question if maybe homosexuals should start punching some people in the head. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
then nobody would be using their words derogatorily. You know,
Huh.
realize, like, okay, so if that word, the N word, right?
Yeah.
If that really meant what people act like it's derogatory about, them being a slave, we would still say it all the time if we really believed that about them. We believe that they could probably, like, physically manhandle us in a lot of situations, so we don't say it. That's because they're not slaves anymore.
Yeah.
They've risen up, at least physically. You know what I mean? If a slave beat their master, well, they got shot in the fucking face and then buried in the backyard or fed to the pigs or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That such is not the case in this situation. You have some kind of equal grounding. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
a lot of weird dynamics inside of this, and these weird dynamics are exactly why maybe fuck words, dude. Like, it's just way too confusing. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
You know? Which word's okay? Oh, well, it's okay if I'm with all of my white friends who listen to rap. They all say this. It's totally normal. And, like, we don't actually mean somebody who's, like, enslaved or anything. We actually mean, like, our really good friend.
Right.
So it's okay here, but then, like, this person comes around, oh, it ain't so good here. You know, it was so
Yeah.
funny back when I was younger, because, like, I knew some guys who were they're the black guys that you don't want to say the N word around.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
All
Like,
right.
through and through. I mean, down to the name. One of them was named
Story's starting out
Elwood.
great. Keep
Okay?
going.
His name was Elwood. All right? Like, I've seen this guy was like knock a dude out for like 20 minutes in just like one punch, right? It's like it's exactly the guy you don't want to say this around. And I had like lots of white boy friends who would come around, whatever, buying weed, smoking weed, skateboarding, being a white kid,
Uh-huh.
like all this stuff. And sometimes Elwood would be around, and then sometimes they'd just drop the "What's up?" and he'd be like, "Excuse me?" And they would just shit themselves. He actually
Yeah.
didn't have a problem with the word at all. He didn't have a problem
Oh,
with it at
nice.
all. He just liked to make white kids shit themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
He's trolling.
So is
It's
that
so funny, dude.
okay? So is meeting him then? Do you think that's what has helped create your perspective on that, or at least early on, because you had the guy you don't want to say that to treat it that way. He didn't actually beat the shit out of him, so it didn't instill that fear in you then, or that reason not to do it. You're fortunate that dynamic has to have it where he wasn't quite like that, right?
I think there's probably some dynamic with interfacing with him that took some of the edge off the word and
Yeah.
allowed me to look at it as not this, like, unequivocally wrong thing that society
Right.
puts on it. people who have a problem with being called that word have some level of slavery inside of them. I know
Mm.
this because Elwood did not, and he did not really care about that word at all. I'm not going to
Mm.
say that he wouldn't use it as some type of justification for beating the shit out of a guy. He would do that. But it was literally just because he was
Yeah.
manipulating a justification to beat the shit out of a guy.
Right.
That's just the thing, you know.
Okay, that makes
And
sense. Yeah, that's
El would
different.
beat people up. Like I said, he was exactly the kind of guy that you didn't want to say that around. You know what I mean? So he
Well,
was literally a Gold Gloves boxer. He wasn't 6'4", 320, but he was big enough that you didn't want to mess with him.
Kevin
You know what I
said,
mean?
"See all white kids down here are just letting that word fly." Really? And he said, "Being
Yeah,
from DC and I guess from the era I'm from, you get your ass handed to you, son." Yeah,
yeah. There
that's
used to
never
be a
been
time
okay
and
where I've
space
been.
where that did not go down, but I think the world has changed in that a lot of ways, and I think
Yeah,
that's a good thing, dude.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
honestly, so this was like an ayahuasca thing for me. I was okay. First time I ever drank ayahuasca, I got a lot of messages of like, you're not supposed to be doing this, and so I thought I wasn't supposed to drink ayahuasca ever again.
Wait,
And
like
I had
personal
like
messages from yourself? Like, what do you mean? You got a lot of messages?
ayahuasca was talking to me and telling me that I'm not supposed to be engaging with this like this.
Okay,
And so
while you were down there.
to me at that point in time it said like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Ayahuasca doesn't want me, kind of thing like that.
Okay, okay,
There's a
okay.
lot of psychological dynamics. We're going to
Right,
try and
right,
get
right, right,
past
right.
them for posterity's sake of
All
the
right, all
story.
right. This before you
Um,
took it though, right? But you're down there already.
I took it once, and there was many psychological messages that came through. It sounded like a intuition or message from the higher self or an
Hmm.
entity talking to you or the voice in your head, whatever you want to call it, that was
Yeah.
saying like, you're not supposed to do it like this. You're not supposed to be doing this. You made an agreement. I made agreements younger in my life that like, well, basically that I wouldn't do psychedelics anymore. I've since completely broken those agreements, but I
Yeah.
made those agreements to myself, or
Yeah.
to me, they were I was making them to psychedelics. Upon coming to realize that I actually made those with myself, then I was like,
Yep.
well, that means that I can fucking break them if I want to.
Yep.
So I did, and
Yep.
nevertheless, the real point that I'm trying to get here, what is that actually? I tangented a lot right there.
Oh, good
Um,
job, Zach. Let me try to chase it back. I was following you. Um, you brought I.
Ayahuasca. No, oh, okay. Offense. So I I felt like ayahuasca was telling me not to do it. Like it didn't want me to engage with it like that. I needed to do something. I didn't know what yet, but I wasn't supposed to be engaging with it like this. And I wasn't actually going to drink ayahuasca anymore. But the guy that like was the whole reason why I went to the specific place that I went to, I ended up like I was sitting out in the fucking middle of the jungle, actually freaking the fuck out, and he randomly shows up out of nowhere and sits down with me to smoke a joint. And then he's talking to me about this stuff, and like he got me past this idea that I shouldn't try it again. That I should try it one more time and see if the message comes again, because if it's a true message, it'll come again, right? And I'm like, yeah,
Okay, fair
totally.
enough.
You can't
Yeah,
destroy the truth, so if it's true, it'll be there
that
again.
seems like good
It's just
reasoning.
another like 6 hours of fucking trash in order to
Yep.
like find that out. So it's not a big deal. And
Yikes.
then
Yeah.
like but then I
Yeah.
tried to like sabotage myself again. The next thing that I tried to say was like, "Oh shit, well I'm going to offend ayahuasca, this big powerful entity that it was in my mind at that point in time, and I don't want to do that." And long story short of this was through a fairly long conversation about this, it was came to realize that like a person that something that gets offended is really not actually exercising proper intelligence. They're unintelligent, right? And so there's no way that ayahuasca would be
Yep.
offended with me doing it, because I perceived ayahuasca as being highly intelligent, like
Right.
much beyond my own intelligence. And so the real uh
Okay,
so
so to
that
finish
was
it. No,
I
so
don't
the
remember why I was talking
no,
about getting
great. Let me.
offended.
It
Oh,
brought a
don't get
question.
offended by
Yeah, but it brought a
words.
question.
Like
It
there's
brought
no
me a question. You
reason.
said you saw at that time you saw it as a big, powerful entity. How do you see ayahuasca now?
Me.
Yes.
It's me. It's always been me. Like all of it was me. Everything was me. Every entity, every thought, every story, every book, everything that I'm doing right now, the character that I'm playing in this video game and the character that every other person is playing in it, and you go ahead and be the judge whether I'm talking about the one on my computer or the one on my other computer, which is talking to you, or the one that's in real life, my other computer that I'm playing. I like it's all you. It's all one thing. There
Mm-hmm.
is no separation of other things. So there is, to me, at that level at least, there is really no entity ayahuasca. There's different dimensionalities of yourself, to wit, you will often identify them based off of their agenda and or function in your life, and sometimes you will lump those into other people's, and then they are a way of you understanding how your mind works, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But so is a relationship that you have with your girlfriend, or the experience that you have while you look at a tree, or a movie that you watch. All of these things are an experience that explains to you more of what you really are, which is all the stuff, the infinite potential. And so all the stories, including ayahuasca itself, is just you. It's just me, and you're me, and I mean the Mayans believe this as well. In Lakesh
Beautiful.
Alakin was the word that they said for it, and I am another you. You are another me,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, it feels
Beautiful.
better to
Love
me.
it.
I'm really like all I really care about. Is because I realize their stories, and I'm totally fine with that. Or at least I realize, when I say I realize that, that is substantiated in my reality. If someone else lives in a different reality, maybe your reality is different. I don't care whether ours are the same, really. But nevertheless, I realize that I really am only interested in understanding what like unity at the max level is, even if I have to like make it up to myself. Like if it doesn't
Mm.
really exist, but I can make it up in my mind and put a story on it
Yeah, no
enough to
doubt.
make it very believable to myself,
Yeah,
that's
right.
fine.
Yep.
I'm just looking to see that thing. Like I don't care whether it's real or fake or
Yeah.
anything like that. My want to see it, to my own personal take on myself, insinuates that it is not a real thing. It's a thing that I want to make up. I want to express myself in this other way, and so I'm bringing about a novel experience that I want to see
And
of
that goes back
myself.
to the study that on the TED Talk I was seeing, or the Joe Rogan thing about endorphin release. Headrest things all tweaked. The endorphin release in the brain whenever you do the constant stream of endorphin release when you're doing what you believe is the right thing for you to do, whatever that means. Very ambiguous. But so if you can create something in your mind
Yeah.
that you believe it enough, you generate the release that creates momentum or whatever into a vector in
Yep.
your life. I dig
Yeah.
it. All right, I gotta run. I think I got an emergency work call. I'm gonna have to go out and handle, so I gotta call them right back. So
All
that's
right.
it for me.
Well, I love you all.
And you
Thank you
got
for
food to
joining
eat.
us on our random talk about stuff and things.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Next time
Stop by
Monday.
another time,
Like,
Monday. It will be our
subscribe.
100th show. We've done 100
Oh,
shows.
nice. Yeah,
Like,
jeez.
what
I'll have to
the
count the
fuck,
days on that.
dude?
Yeah, it hasn't been that long,
That's
man. Like
crazy,
the end of
dude.
April. Yeah.
Holy shit. All right. Well, I love everybody. Have a wonderful night. From expanded understanding to you, nature rewards courage and being fearless. And go
And join us
crush
on
it.
Discord so we can play
Take
games
action.
together and connect there. Links down below. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We'll see you on the
All that
next
stuff.
show.
Peace easy.
Peace.